Greetings, wanderers. Tonight, we drift back to the time of early colonial America, a time often painted in bold and brutal strokes, where you fought each day for the right to exist. Ongoing hostilities from those whose land you had taken, hardships, war, hunger. You may think you know this story, Hollywood has told it many times, but the truth may be colder, hungrier, and far more savage than you imagine. If you enjoy these quiet journeys through history, you're welcome to like and subscribe, but only if it feels right for you. And while you're still conscious, do leave a comment. Tell me where in the world you are listening from and what time it is there. It's always a delight to see where these stories find you. Now, let's settle in, dim the lights, and begin this bedside journey into the past together. You barely remember stepping off the ship. One moment, you are clutching the splintered rail, dizzy and raw. The next, the ground heaves beneath your feet. You taste the salt and sickness in your mouth, your tongue heavy and cracked. Your boots stick in the sucking sand, and already you feel the damp creep through the soles, a slow cold working up your legs. Your muscles burn from weeks without rest, without real food. Each breath is a struggle, every rib counted in your chest. The wind drives rain sideways, sharp and stinging, as you and the others lurch across the shoreline. There is no cheer, no celebration, just a shuffling line of shadows. A man drops to his knees in the surf, heaving, his arms shaking with exhaustion. Behind him, a woman holds a child close, her lips pressed thin, face gray with hunger and fear. Some try to help, but most just stumble forward, silent and hollow-eyed. The stink of old vomit, sweat, and unwashed bodies clings to your group, made worse by the wind that never stops blowing. You expect the land to welcome you, some part of you always believed that. Instead, you are met by death. You see it before you are even fully ashore. A row of makeshift graves, wooden crosses hammered into the sand. The earth around them is churned up and sinking, as if even the ground refuses to hold what is buried there. Bits of cloth flutter from the edges, scraps of old shirts, a patch of a bonnet. Farther along, something glints in the mud. A child's shoe, one lace gone, teeth marks visible in the leather. Someone behind you curses under their breath. The message is clear and immediate. Others came here before you, and this is what remains. There is no sign, no flag, no words carved for comfort, just graves and what little the sea has not stolen. You look up, hoping for the outline of a house, a fence, anything familiar. There is only forest, dense and dripping, and the steady hiss of the rain. You move among the debris. There is a broken spoon, a kettle with its lid snapped off, a wooden bowl stained dark. You stoop to pick up a page of a diary, the ink washed into blurs and smears, nothing legible except a single word. Hunger. Someone else finds a cracked mug, a doll with one glass eye and the other socket empty. Its face is smeared with something dark, maybe blood, maybe just the memory of a child who had to let it go. You tell yourself these are just things, but you cannot shake the sense that you have walked into the last chapter of someone else's story. Rain falls harder, cold, and relentless. You try to shield your pack, but it soaks through in minutes. Every blanket, every scrap of clothing is heavy with water. Someone tries to start a fire, hands trembling as they strike the flint, but the wood is slick and the kindling soggy. The first spark dies instantly, and the second never catches at all. Smoke curls into your eyes, hot and acrid, and you cough until your chest aches. The little warmth you find is stolen by the wind. By now, everyone is shivering, jaws clenched. Eyes fixed on the tiny circle of light the fire offers before it gutters out with a wet hiss. Back home, a storm meant walls, warmth, and shelter. Here, it means nothing is safe. You watch your breath steam in the cold, your fingers numb, the skin beginning to split around your nails. The world is stripped down to mud and misery. You huddle close to the others, each person jealously guarding what little they have left. Even conversation is muted. There is nothing left to say. As night falls, the first true wave of sickness arrives. It is sudden and unforgiving. One by one, people double over, retching into the sand. Someone collapses, face in the mud, unmoving until another rolls them over, only to find their lips tinged blue. A child moans, clutching their stomach. Your own guts twist, and you wonder if it is the bad water or simply terror. There are no doctors here. No medicine, no clean linens. You remember a time when illness meant help was only a call away, a visit to a clinic, a dose of something bitter, and then a warm bed. Here, the only remedy is endurance. You try not to look at the graves, but they are always there, watching, accusing. You tell yourself you will not end up there, but the thought has no weight. The world changes as the sky darkens. The trees at the edge of the clearing lean in closer, their branches dripping like fingers. Every sound is sharper. The snap of a twig, the sudden cry of an animal. Somewhere in the distance, a chorus of howls rises and falls, too many voices to count, too close to ignore. Someone in your group whispers that they hear drumming, steady and low, coming from the woods. At first you laugh, but then you hear it too. The faint, regular beat, not quite natural, not quite imagined. You keep watch by the dying fire, the light flickering on faces that seem carved from stone. You try to tell yourself that these are just the noises of the wild. But in the shadows, something moves. You see it, a pair of eyes reflecting red for a heartbeat, then vanishing. You tell yourself it is only an animal, but deep inside, you know better. You rise in the morning, if it can be called that, just a thinning of the darkness, a little less cold. You are greeted by more bad news. The sacks of grain are torn open, the contents half-eaten, scattered in the mud. Something else is missing too, one of the bundles of dried fish, gone without a trace. There are prints in the soft ground. Some belong to animals, deer maybe, or wild dogs. But there are others, wide and flat, not made by any shoe you know. On the bark of a tree, you see a line of red paint, fresh and deliberate, curving around the trunk in a pattern you do not recognize. Smoke rises in the distance. Not one column, but several, thin and straight, climbing into the sky from deep within the woods. You realize you are being watched. You have been since you landed. A few argue about what to do next. One man wants to build a shelter near the water, ready to flee if danger comes. Another insists on moving into the trees for cover. A woman shouts that someone has stolen her blanket. A boy accuses another of taking too much bread. Voices rise, harsh and frightened, every word an accusation. You remember a time when arguments ended with laughter or apology. Now, every disagreement feels like the start of violence. You try to stay out of it, but the anger is contagious. Soon you are shouting too, desperate to hold onto something, anything, that will keep you safe. The idea of us and them is already fading, replaced by a shifting sense of threat that includes everyone. As the argument rages, you hear a cry, a thin, desperate scream that cuts through the air. You rush toward the sound, stumbling over roots and slipping in the mud. At the edge of camp, you find a mother on her knees, her hands clutching at empty air. She points to the trees, sobbing out the child's name. You search, calling, your heart pounding. The trail is easy to follow, small prints, bare feet, pressed deep and hurried, leading straight into the undergrowth. But you are not alone in following. Another set of tracks, larger and lighter, run alongside. In the brush, you find a strand of beads, red and white, nothing like anything you have ever seen before. You do not find the child. Night brings no rest. Instead, it brings new dangers. The rain picks up, soaking everything all over again. Your blankets are sodden, your boots squelch with every step. You sleep, if you can call it sleep, in fits and starts, haunted by every sound. A branch snaps, something heavy moves just beyond the firelight. You listen for breathing that is not your own. The fear is physical, a weight in your chest, a tremor in your hands. You think of comfort as something that once belonged to you, like an old friend lost across the sea. Here, you are left with the ache of hunger, the bite of cold, and the memory of a world that feels impossibly far away. Once, the worst night meant losing sleep and a story to tell in the morning. Now, it means hoping you wake up at all. When dawn finally comes, it finds you smaller, colder, and even less certain. The food is not enough, someone or something has taken more in the night. Animal tracks circle the camp, but next to them are the same unfamiliar prints, pressed deeper than before. A bird lies dead on the edge of the clearing, its feathers plucked, a warning or an accident, no one is sure. Someone mutters about curses, another blames the mother for not watching her child, another blames the men for not keeping watch. You are all to blame and none. The graves at the edge of the beach are soft and sinking, the rain having washed the names away. You wonder how long it will take for your own story to disappear, to become nothing but bones and scattered things, a warning for the next fool to come ashore. You look to the forest. The smoke still rises. The painted symbols mark the trees, bright and deliberate. The world you have entered is not empty, and you are not welcome. You grip your last dry scrap of blanket and wait for the next disaster to come. Morning comes, not with light, but with a slow dissolving of the darkness. You wake to the sound of someone coughing and the sickly smell of mud and cold ash. There is no warmth in the dawn, only a thinner shade of gray. Your blanket is still soaked, your body aches, your stomach growls. You sit up, bones stiff, and try to convince yourself you slept at all. You have stopped counting how many days it has been since your feet felt truly dry. You stand, blinking, and see the others moving quietly around the camp. No one says good morning. There is a hush that feels unnatural, as if the air itself is holding a secret. Then you see it, a mark on a tree, fresh and sharp, carved higher than you can reach. The lines are filled with a thick red pigment, the color too bold to be mistaken for anything natural. It drips slightly in the morning damp. Someone calls the group over. You all stand in a silent circle, studying the symbol as if it might blink back at you. You are not the first to see the print in the mud, either. It is pressed near where you slept, wide and long, with a shape and pattern that matches no boot or shoe in the camp. The edges are crisp, not yet smudged by rain or time. It must have been made while you slept, close enough that you could have reached out and touched whoever left it. Someone mutters a prayer. Another pulls their blanket tighter. In another world, this would have meant calling the police, or at least switching on the porch light. Here, it is only proof that you are being watched. You busy yourself with the morning routine, but every task feels staged, every movement too loud. The firewood is soaked. The bread is already molding. When you look up, you see the trees crowding in at the edge of the camp, their shadows long and unmoving. You keep searching for movement, for a flash of color or the gleam of an eye. Your heart hammers in your chest every time a branch sways. Someone tries to take charge. He suggests leaving a gift at the tree line, something to show peace, a length of ribbon, a tin cup, a small wooden carving. You walk together and set the offerings on a flat stone. No one speaks as you retreat back to the center of camp. You watch all day, waiting. By dawn the next morning, the gifts are gone, replaced by a single feather and a small circle of stones, laid with deliberate care. The message is impossible to read. Someone says it is a welcome, someone else hisses that it is a warning. No one is comforted. You search the edge of camp and find a snare set between two trees, the kind you do not know how to tie. A squirrel is caught, its neck broken, still warm to the touch. A debate begins over whether it is safe to eat. Hunger wins. Someone skins the animal with shaking hands and roasts it over what little fire you manage. There are whispers that the group has just cursed itself. That night, 2 more snares are found, empty this time, as if someone is showing you exactly how vulnerable you are. The tension builds with each hour. It becomes a habit to watch the woods, to count how long it takes for the wind to change. You are sure you see movement at the edge of vision, a shoulder, the glint of paint on skin, a brief flicker of red or white. They vanish before you can call out. One of the men claims he saw faces, 3 or 4, watching from behind the trees. You do not doubt him. The only thing worse than seeing something is being the only one who does. You try to keep busy, repairing blankets, checking supplies, but every task is interrupted by the sound of a branch snapping, the sudden hush that falls as everyone listens. A woman discovers her beans are missing. Someone else cannot find their knife. You check your own bag and count fewer biscuits than you remember. The footprints are everywhere now, circling the camp in wide loops. Some are barefoot, others show the outline of wrapped leather. The edges are always new. It is clear that whoever is out there comes and goes as they please. You try to laugh about it, but the sound dies in your throat. A meeting is called. Some want to approach the watchers with open hands to show you mean no harm. Others call it madness. They shout that the gifts have done nothing but invite thieves, that you have only made yourself look weak. The argument grows heated. Voices rise, accusations fly. Someone says the missing beans are proof of betrayal inside the camp. Someone else blames the watchers. A fistfight nearly breaks out. You remember a time when a neighbor's petty theft was settled with a call, a warning, even a laugh. Here, every slight feels like an act of war. In the end, a group volunteers to try peaceful contact. You are chosen, your heart pounding as you step past the fire's edge and into the shadows. You walk slowly, hands open, palms out, trying to remember the signs of peace you learned from stories. The others wait behind you, silent as stones. The woods are impossibly still. Then, shapes materialize among the trees, tall and motionless, faces painted, eyes dark and careful. You count 4, maybe 5. They make no move toward you. You speak, your voice shaking, offering food, water, peace. One of them lifts a hand and lets it fall. Another says something in a language you do not understand, sharp and clipped. It sounds like a warning or maybe a test. You want to believe they are as frightened as you, but you do not know. The figures fade into the trees, soundless as ghosts. You do not follow. When you return to camp, the others are waiting, faces tight with fear. You try to explain, but you have nothing to offer them but more uncertainty. Afternoon passes in a kind of haze. The air grows thick, heavy with the threat of rain. People move in small circles, each eyeing the woods and each other. Another bundle of beans disappears. A knife is found buried in the mud near the edge of camp, blade bent. Someone blames the children, someone else swears it was taken by the watchers. The argument returns, sharper this time, voices rising into shouts. There is no trust left, only suspicion and fear. As the sun sinks, someone goes to gather firewood. He is careful, keeps within sight, but it is not enough. The scream comes sudden and sharp, and you run, heart pounding, stumbling through the mud and branches. You find him sprawled on the ground, clutching his arm, blood pouring between his fingers. An arrow sticks out of the earth beside him, its tip chipped stone, the shaft feathered in bright blue. The attacker is gone, vanished into the gathering dark. You drag him back to camp, tearing strips of blanket to bind the wound. The man's teeth chatter with shock. Panic takes over. People shout for weapons. Anything sharp or heavy becomes precious. Barrels and crates are dragged into a circle, a feeble attempt at a wall. The fire is built too high, casting flickering shadows that make everyone jump. Someone cries, another curses, another simply rocks back and forth with a wild look in their eyes. You try to remember what safety felt like, what it meant to lock a door and trust the world outside. Here, there are no locks, and the world is not on your side. You sit with your back to the fire, eyes fixed on the tree line, listening for the whisper of movement. Every branch that sways, every leaf that falls, every sigh of wind becomes a warning. No one sleeps. You wait for the next attack, wondering if it will come in silence or in screams. Some whisper that you should leave, run for the boats, anything to escape this haunted place. Others say there is nowhere to go, that the sea will only kill you faster than the forest. For now, you are trapped, caught between the watchers and your own fear. The woods are alive with sound, and you know now it is not only animals that watch. You have seen the faces, heard the warnings. Tomorrow, you will count your numbers again and find you are fewer. Tomorrow, you will wonder if you are the hunted or the lost. Morning drags you out of uneasy dreams. You wake coughing, the taste of ash and rot thick on your tongue. Your throat is dry and burning, and your head aches as if someone has pressed stones into your skull. The air in camp is foul, heavy with the stink of sweat, mold, and old sickness. Every movement is slow, every limb weighted as if your own body is turning against you. You blink at the gray sky, eyes swollen from another night of no sleep. The fire is nothing but a smear of blackened wood and cold ashes. You try to rise, and your joints pop and crack. Around you, others are already awake, or perhaps they never slept. Some cough into rags, some sit huddled close together for warmth, and some stare blankly into nothing, hollow as empty bowls. It does not take long to realize the sickness is spreading. Someone retches into the mud, shoulders shaking, face gray and slick with sweat. A child is feverish, cheeks flushed, shivering even under 2 blankets. An old man's breathing rattles loud enough to hear from across the camp, each inhale a struggle, each exhale sounding like surrender. You try to remember when a cough meant a trip to the clinic, a bottle of syrup, a day spent wrapped in clean sheets. Here, you count how many are left standing, how many can walk, how many you will have to carry. The water is the first thing you suspect. You dip your hand in the barrel and lift it to your nose. The smell is off, sharp and sour. Someone mutters that the stream was fine yesterday. Someone else says they saw dead fish drifting where you filled the buckets. The panic is quiet at first, then grows louder as more fall ill. There is a scramble to find another source, but all you have is mud and puddles. Every sip is a risk you must take. A woman collapses while trying to fetch kindling. Her face is slick with sweat, her lips dry and cracked. You carry her back to the camp, her body limp in your arms. A few words are whispered over her, a short prayer, and then she is wrapped in a torn blanket and laid to rest on the edge of the graveyard. The ground is hard and full of roots. Digging is slow work. You wonder how many more graves you will need before the week is over. Food is no comfort. You open the last bag of flour and find it crawling with weevils, the grain bitter with rot. You pick through for anything that can be saved. Someone tries to boil roots and leaves into soup, but the taste is foul and it burns the throat. A man spits blood after drinking, his mouth stained purple. Later, someone finds berries and eats them in handfuls. By nightfall, he is curled on the ground, clutching his belly, moaning in agony. Someone says the berries were poison. No one is surprised. Hunger makes you careless. Someone accuses another of taking more than their share, of hiding food in the folds of their blanket. Voices rise, sharp and ugly. Fists clench, knives are drawn. There is no trust, not anymore. You remember when sharing a meal meant comfort, laughter, the passing of a bowl across a table. Here, it means suspicion and violence. It is not just the sickness and the hunger. There is always something moving at the edge of sight. You see them, shapes among the trees, sometimes alone, sometimes in groups, always just out of reach. One morning, you wake to find a bundle left at the edge of camp. Inside are fish, wrapped in reeds, and a carved piece of bone. Someone whispers that it is a gift, a gesture of peace. Someone else hisses that it is a trick, that the fish are poisoned or cursed. The debate turns sour. In the end, no one eats the fish. The carved bone is tossed into the fire. A scout returns from the woods, breathless and wild-eyed. He says he spoke to a boy young and quiet, who wore feathers and carried a stick marked with paint. They exchanged signs, a handful of words, but nothing more. The boy fled before anything could be said. Some call the scout brave, others a fool who will bring ruin down on everyone. At night, the sickness feels closer, heavier. Coughing spreads like wildfire. You hear it in every tent, every huddled figure, a chorus of pain. Wild dogs circle the camp, their eyes glowing, their bodies thin and desperate. They slink between the shadows, sniffing the air, hoping for what you are too weak to protect. You toss stones to drive them away, but they never go far. You wonder if you are defending the living or feeding the dead. One night, a man vanishes. No one sees him go. In the morning, you find him at the edge of camp, body broken, throat cut, eyes wide and staring at nothing. Some say it was the watchers in the woods. Some say it was his own hand, unable to bear the sickness and fear. You stand over him, numb, and listen to the argument unfold. No one agrees on what happened, but everyone feels the same dread. You bury him quickly, the grave shallow, the earth barely covering his face. The group grows quieter with each day. Faces are gaunt, eyes sunken. The children cry less, or perhaps they have learned not to. Even the forest is silent, as if holding its breath. You spend your time checking the boundary of camp, watching for footprints, for any sign that someone or something has been near. Each day you find new tracks, sometimes small, sometimes large, always circling, always watching. One evening, you find someone has tried to steal food. The evidence is clear, crumbs leading from the supply tent to a blanket hidden behind a fallen log. The thief is caught and dragged into the middle of camp. There is shouting, spitting, blows exchanged. In another world, this would have meant the police, a night in a cell, a chance to explain. Here, the punishment is quick and harsh. The thief is beaten, his hands tied. You look away, ashamed, but do nothing to stop it. The next day, the water is gone. The barrel is overturned, the ground soaked and wasted. Someone accuses the watchers, others blame the children. It does not matter. There is nothing left to drink. A woman volunteers to go find more, her face determined, her eyes bright with fever. Hours pass. She does not return. When you search, you find only her scarf, snagged on a thorn, stained with blood. Fear now is as constant as hunger. You watch each other as closely as you watch the trees. You sleep with a stick or a stone beside your head. You check your food and water twice, then a third time. Every cough is a threat. Every absence is a loss. At sunset, shapes move among the trees again. You see them clearly this time, 3 figures, tall and painted, faces shadowed by the branches. They do not come closer. They do not need to. You sense their patience, their confidence. You realize you are surrounded, not by emptiness, but by the unknown. As night closes in, you hear the first notes of singing, soft and low, floating on the wind from the forest. It is not your language. It is not meant for you. You curl under your blanket and wait for the darkness to end, knowing there is no safety in sleep, no hope in waking. Only another day of sickness, hunger, and the cold certainty that enemies wait both within and without. You wake to a scream, and for a moment you do not know where you are. The sky is still dark, the stars just beginning to fade. The air in your lungs is cold, sharp, and you shiver as you throw off the blanket, heart already pounding. Others are moving, confused, stumbling out of sleep. There is shouting at the edge of camp. You see a figure on the ground, a tangle of limbs, someone bent over him, sobbing. You push through the crowd and see the blood, black in the half-light, pooling under a body. A man you shared bread with only yesterday, now pale and still, eyes open to the morning sky. His shirt is torn and stained. There is a wound on his chest, deep and jagged, nothing like the marks made by your tools or knives. Beside the body lies a broken shaft, the tip flaked from stone, the wood dark with blood. The smell is thick and metallic, turning your stomach. Someone shouts for vengeance, voice cracked and wild. Others hang back, faces gray, eyes hollow. You kneel and touch the man's hand. It is already cold. You notice something else, small and strange, a line of paint on his wrist, a color you have seen on the marked trees. Someone whispers that it was not an accident. Someone else says it is a message. The camp is chaos. People pace in circles, arguing about what to do. Some demand immediate revenge, fists clenched and faces hard. Others beg for caution, voices tight with fear. You try to listen, but the noise is a rising tide. The group splits quickly, lines drawn in the mud. You find yourself pulled in both directions, heart thudding, fear and anger tangling together. There was a time when justice meant waiting for answers, waiting for law. Now it means who is loudest and quickest to blame. An attack party forms, small and desperate, armed with axes and sharpened sticks. You are pressed into the group, your feet barely steady. You move into the trees, every sound magnified, every branch a threat. The woods are wet and close. You follow a trail, fresh footprints, snapped twigs, a drop of blood on a leaf. The air smells of damp earth, sweat, and the iron tang of fear. You do not go far before you see movement. Figures slip between the trees, silent and fast. You shout, waving your arms, but they vanish like mist. Someone throws a stone, another brandishes a stick. For a moment, it is chaos. You hear a shout, a thud, and someone crashes to the ground. The others surge forward, but it is over before it begins. There is nothing left but the sound of your own breathing, ragged and desperate. You return to camp empty-handed, more frightened than before. Some call the attack a success, others call it madness. In the distance, smoke rises again, but this time it is closer. You smell burning wood, the sharpness of green leaves thrown into the fire. The air is full of tension, a pressure you feel behind your eyes. As the sun rises, the first arrows strike the camp. One lands near your feet, quivering in the mud. Another thuds into a tent, splitting the canvas. People scatter, ducking and shouting, clutching children to their chests. You crawl behind a crate, heart hammering, eyes wide as more arrows slice through the air. Someone screams. You see a woman clutching her arm, blood seeping through her sleeve. Another man drags a child behind a pile of barrels. A dog yelps, then is silent. Panic takes hold. Fires are kicked over in the rush to hide. Smoke billows into your face, choking and hot. You pull a blanket over your head and try not to breathe. The world is noise and confusion. You hear voices, shouts in a language you do not know, calls that echo through the trees. You try to count the arrows, try to guess how many are out there, how many are watching, waiting. Someone tries to rally the group, shouting orders to gather weapons and form a line. Another screams that you should run, abandon camp, flee to the water. The old arguments return, sharper and more desperate. In the chaos, you lose track of the children, the old, the sick. Someone trips in the smoke and goes down hard. No one stops to help. The fighting is clumsy, frantic. Some try to chase shadows in the trees, swinging sticks, throwing stones. Others crouch low, hands over their heads, praying for it to end. You catch sight of a painted face, bright in the morning light, just before it disappears behind the trunks. An arrow lands inches from your hand. The fear is so sharp it tastes bitter in your mouth. When the attack ends, it is sudden. The arrows stop, the shouts fade. You are left blinking in the smoke, ears ringing. The camp is a ruin, tents torn, crates smashed, the earth trampled and muddy. Blood streaks the grass. You see bodies, 2 men, a woman, a child. Someone tries to tend to the wounded, tearing strips of cloth for bandages. You help dig a shallow grave, hands numb, eyes burning with tears that will not fall. The ground is wet and sticky, and the work never seems to end. A group gathers the dead, wraps them in what blankets remain, and lowers them into the earth. The grave is not deep, the soil too hard and full of roots. You pile stones on top, as much to keep animals away as to mark the place. There are no words, only the sound of shovels and the low, broken sobs of those left behind. As you work, the sky darkens again. Clouds roll in, heavy and low, and rain begins to fall, turning the camp to mud. The firewood is soaked. You watch the water seep into the graves, into the tents, into every crack and hollow. Someone sits by the graves, head in hands, rocking back and forth. Another stares into the woods, jaw clenched, as if waiting for the next attack. That night, no one sleeps. You sit by the remnants of the fire, eyes open, back to back with others who are too tired to speak. Every sound is magnified. You flinch at the crack of a branch, the sigh of wind through the leaves. Someone whispers a prayer, someone else curses the land, the voyage, everything that brought you here. In the dark, you hear movement at the edge of camp. Footsteps in the mud, a rustle in the undergrowth. You clutch a stick in your hands, knuckles white. The fire throws wild shadows, and you imagine faces in every flicker of light. You wonder who will be next, who will vanish before morning. You remember a time when violence was something distant, something you read about or watched behind glass. Here, it is a part of you, a shadow that follows every step. The line between friend and enemy blurs. The camp is divided, split by anger, fear, and the need to survive. There is no peace, only waiting. When morning comes, you count the living and find you are fewer. The wounded groan, the dead are silent. The fire smolders in the rain. The ground is red with mud and blood. You look up and see the smoke still rising from the trees. You know this is only the beginning. The sun barely lifts above the trees, and you already know there will be no real warmth today. You lie awake long before the first light, listening to your stomach groan and to the slow breathing of the people around you. Your throat is dry, your mouth thick and bitter. The taste of hunger is something you cannot spit out. You drag yourself to your feet, boots sinking into cold mud. The camp smells of damp wool, rot, and fear. The fires are nothing but black stumps and damp ash. You dig through what remains of last night's meal, licking your fingers for the last trace of grease. There is not enough, not for everyone, not even for half. You count the stores again, hoping the numbers will change if you look long enough. They do not. The flour is crawling with worms. The sacks of beans are thin as empty bellies. The meat is gone. You scrape at the bottom of a barrel, gathering crumbs, listening to someone mutter prayers that sound more like curses. At home, hunger meant skipping breakfast and making plans for lunch. Here, you plan who might die first if no food is found. Arguments start before the sun is fully up. A woman accuses her neighbor of stealing bread. A man swears someone took his last strip of dried fish. Another insists that a child has been hiding food in the folds of her coat. You try to stay out of it, but the anger is a living thing, growing sharper and louder as the day goes on. Knives are drawn. Shouting turns to shoving. Trust disappears like the morning fog. You join a hunting party that sets out into the woods, desperate for anything that moves. The world outside the camp is silent. Even the birds are gone. You walk for hours, every stick and leaf snapping loud as thunder. Your stomach aches, your hands shake. When you finally spot movement, a thin rabbit darting through the brush, someone's thrown rock misses by a foot. The animal is gone, and the group turns on each other with blame and snarls. There is talk of traps, but the only things caught are rats and a single snake. You roast the snake over the fire. The meat is tough and stringy, but no one complains. Later, you find a few small fish in the shallows of a stream, and the group argues over who should get them. You eat your share with shaking hands, licking the bones clean, wishing for more. Night comes and the hunger grows mean. You hear someone crying softly, pressed against the edge of a shelter, arms wrapped tight around an empty belly. A child asks for bread. His mother shakes her head, eyes blank, voice flat. You remember a time when you would have opened the pantry, found something sweet or salty, and laughed about midnight snacks. Now you are haunted by the memory of food. That night, you hear scratching in the dark. Rats. You wake to the sound of them tearing into the grain sacks, scrambling for the last crumbs. Someone throws a rock and hits nothing. A dog lunges and catches only air. The rats scatter, but the damage is done. In the morning, the grain is ruined, droppings mixed with what little is left. The next day, the hunger is worse. Faces grow hollow, skin stretched thin and gray. People start to eye each other differently. You catch someone counting heads, measuring the strength of each person left. Someone else asks what happens when the food is gone. No one answers. That afternoon, someone discovers a horror. In a far corner of the camp, two men find a pile of bones, picked clean. among them scraps of cloth that match the missing man's coat. There is a silence that falls over the group, a deep, frozen terror. You know what has happened, even if no one says it out loud. Someone has eaten to survive. You look away, feeling your stomach turn, your mouth filling with sour spit. A meeting is called, voices sharp and shaking. The talk turns ugly. A woman accuses a man of cannibalism. He denies it, but his eyes give him away. The group explodes in violence. Fists fly, knives flash, someone is bitten, and blood spatters the mud. The accused man is dragged to the center of camp and beaten. There is no trial, no judge, only rage and terror. Once, the worst crime was stealing from the market. Here, you watch your neighbors punish a man for doing what hunger forced him to do. There is no law except what the group decides, and today the group is cruel. After the beating, a girl runs. She is seen slipping through the edge of camp, heading toward the trees, clutching a sack to her chest. A man calls after her, but she does not look back. Some whisper she has gone to find the people in the woods, hoping they have food or mercy. Others say she is running from guilt. Either way, she is gone. Hours later, the sack is found empty and torn. No sign of the girl. You begin to see the watchers more often. Painted faces appear at the edge of the forest, sometimes laughing, sometimes only staring. One night, a voice calls out, taunting, the words strange but the meaning clear. You are weak, and they know it. That evening, you catch a boy trying to steal a hunk of bread from another's coat. He is caught and dragged before the group. Someone suggests tying him up. Someone else says to throw him out of camp. You remember a time when punishment was a lecture or a grounding. Here, the boy is whipped with a branch until he can barely stand. The group fractures further. Some cluster close, whispering plans of escape or surrender. Others guard the food with weapons, threatening anyone who comes near. There is no leader. Every voice is desperate, every glance a challenge. Another attempt is made to raid the watcher's stores. A handful of men slip into the woods after dark, carrying empty sacks and knives. You wait, shivering in your shelter, heart racing. They return in the night, bloodied and empty-handed, one man limping, another with a gash across his face. You do not ask what happened. Nature does not care about your hunger. That night, a wild animal prowls the edge of camp. You hear snarling, a scream, the crash of bodies in the dark. In the morning, a child's body is found, torn and cold. The group gathers, silent, broken. There are no words left for comfort. A storm rolls in, gray and heavy. The wind tears through the camp, ripping blankets from lines, driving rain sideways. Fires sputter and die. You huddle with the others, counting supplies again, hoping for a miracle. When the storm passes, 2 bodies are found, frozen in the mud, hands still clutching each other. You bury them quickly, digging with numb fingers, rain soaking your hair and face. At the edge of the forest, you see new symbols painted on the trees. They are brighter than before, bold slashes of color you do not understand. Smoke rises in the distance. The watchers have food, or at least fire, and you are left with nothing but hunger. By the end of the day, you are more animal than human. You count every crumb, watch every hand, sleep with a stone under your pillow. The fear is no longer of the forest or the watchers. The fear is of each other, of what hunger has made you. When darkness falls, you press your back against the wall, eyes open, waiting for the next disaster. In the night, you hear laughter from the woods, sharp and cruel, and you know it is not for you. Tomorrow will bring less food, fewer people, and more hunger. You grip your belly and remind yourself what you used to believe about kindness, about neighbors, about the world. Here, hunger is the only law, and you are the hunted. You wake before dawn, heart pounding. The ground is cold, and your back aches from another night spent huddled against the wet earth. You listen for a moment, waiting for the camp to breathe. The air is thick with the sour scent of sweat, wood smoke, and old fear. Every sound feels sharper now, every cough or footstep like the start of something bad. You try to steady your hands as you pull your blanket tighter, but your fingers are stiff and swollen, the skin around your nails red with infection. There are fewer voices now. The group is thinning, each day marked by a new absence. Some are lost to hunger or sickness, others simply gone in the night, their blankets left behind like a final warning. You remember when being alone was a luxury. Here, it means you might not see the morning. You move through the camp quietly, watching faces. The ones who used to joke and speak with kindness now look past you, eyes dark and hollow. No one trusts each other. Every meal is silent, every greeting cautious. You keep your back to a wall if you can find one. A new leader has taken charge. He is a man with a scar down his jaw and a voice like gravel. He makes rules and counts heads at sunrise, barking orders and threats until the group falls into uneasy silence. Some say he is keeping order. Others whisper that he is more dangerous than the forest. You remember when leaders were elected, when there were meetings and choices. Now, leadership is decided by fear. This morning, he is already at the center of camp, shouting for attention. The crowd gathers slowly, wary and tired. He points at two men accused of stealing flour. Their hands are tied behind their backs, and they are dragged in front of the group. The new leader asks if anyone will speak for them. No one does. You look away, heart pounding, as they are tied to a tree and whipped until their backs are red and raw. The punishment is loud and public. The message is clear. Here, law is pain. You do not speak out. You do not dare. You remember a time when justice meant lawyers, evidence, second chances. Here, it is whatever the strongest say. The men are left tied for the morning, shivering in the cold, while the rest of you pretend not to notice. You keep your head down and count the bruises on your own arms, hoping you are never next. The group breaks apart after the punishment. Factions form around fires and scraps of shelter. Some still follow the new leader, clinging to the hope that order will keep you alive. Others gather in the shadows, plotting escape or revenge. There are whispers that a woman slipped away last night, vanishing into the woods. Some say she was running from punishment. Others say she went to join the people who watch you from the trees. The possibility sits heavy in your mind. No one knows for certain. Trust is gone, replaced by suspicion and dread. Later that day, the leader finds a boy hiding under a shelter, gnawing on a piece of stolen bread. The boy is dragged to the center of camp, where he is forced to stand in the cold for hours, hands tied behind his back. The group gathers to watch. Some turn away, pretending to be busy. Others stare, silent and grim. You remember when punishment meant a lecture or time spent alone. Here, it is humiliation, pain, and fear. The boy's mother begs for mercy, but is pushed aside. When the leader finally lets the boy go, his lips are blue and he can barely walk. In the afternoon, a woman is accused of witchcraft. It starts as a whisper, a rumor about the way she gathers herbs, the prayers she mutters over the sick. Someone claims her bread never spoils, that her children never cough. The leader calls her forward and demands she explain herself. She says she is praying for health, but the group is restless and afraid. They tie her to a post and leave her in the rain. No one goes to help her, not even when she begins to sob. By morning, her voice is gone, her hands swollen and raw. That night, you cannot sleep. Every sound is a threat. The fire burns low, smoke curling into your lungs. Rain beats against the tents and shelters, soaking your blanket, running down your face. You watch the shapes of others huddled nearby, each one turned away, each one clutching their food and water clothes. Somewhere nearby, a fight breaks out. You hear shouting, then a cry, then silence. In the morning, you find a man with blood on his hands, eyes wild. He says it was an accident, but no one believes him. The dead man is buried at the edge of camp, in a grave dug by shaking hands. Punishments grow harsher with each day. A man is caught talking about escape. He is locked in a crate, left without food or water for 2 days. When he is finally released, he can barely stand. The leader gathers the group and announces a new law. Anyone caught outside the camp after dark will be whipped or worse. You feel the words settle in your chest like a stone. Once, you would have argued, made a case, spoken for mercy. Now, you say nothing. That evening, you hear footsteps outside your shelter. You grip a stick and hold your breath, waiting. The steps move on. You hear someone else whispering, then a sharp cry. You stay silent. In the morning, a woman is missing. Her blanket is found by the path to the woods, stained with mud and torn at the edge. Some in the group begin to copy the watchers, painting their faces with mud and ash, slipping away to hunt or gather food in the forest. They move quietly, avoiding the leader and his followers, speaking only in whispers. Others call them traitors, threaten them with violence. The lines between groups are no longer clear. Each day, someone else disappears, into the woods or into the grave. You come across a man building a small shrine of stones and feathers. He says it is for protection, to keep the camp safe from harm. The leader sees it and orders it destroyed, shouting that it brings bad luck and will anger the watchers. The man is beaten and driven out of camp. You watch him leave, head bowed, voice trembling with prayers. You wonder if you will ever see him again. The rain does not stop. The ground is a mess of mud and standing water. Blankets rot where they lie. The firewood is too wet to burn, and you huddle under your shelter, shivering. Each night is colder than the last. The group grows quieter, smaller, more afraid. You sleep with one eye open, hand curled around a stone or stick, listening for footsteps, for voices, for anything that might mean danger. The sense of unity that once held the group together is gone. Now, everyone is a potential threat. You guard your food and water, hide what little you have. You speak only when necessary and never about the old world. You remember a time when laws were written down, when courts decided right and wrong. Here, the law is pain and fear, and there is no end to it. The leader calls another meeting. He stands on a crate, shouting about order, about strength, about survival. He says there will be new punishments, new rules, more control. Some cheer, others turn away, faces hard and empty. You listen numb, feeling hope slip further away with every word. Another fight breaks out, this one over a scrap of meat. The struggle is short and violent. One man falls, his head striking a stone. He dies before anyone can help. The group gathers around his body, silent and grim. The leader orders him buried without ceremony. No one prays. You dig the grave in the rain, the soil cold and heavy under your hands. That night, the camp is restless. No one sleeps. You hear footsteps, see shadows moving between the tents. Someone tries to steal a blanket and is caught. The leader orders another beating. The punishment is swift and brutal. You look away, trying to forget the sound. You think often of a world where punishment was rare and fair, where your worst fear was a fine or a few days behind a locked door. Here, justice is whatever the strongest say it is. Mercy is gone. Every kindness is suspect. You wonder what you will become if you survive. You sit by the last dying fire, listening to the wind and the distant sound of drums from the woods. The rain falls harder, washing the blood and dirt into the mud. You grip your blanket, eyes open, waiting for the next rule, the next punishment, the next reason to fear your own neighbors. Morning feels impossibly far away. The cold never leaves you, not even for a moment. It starts in your feet and works its way up, gnawing through boots and blankets, stealing the feeling from your hands and the sense from your mind. When you breathe, your nose stings and your chest aches, as if the air is filled with needles. At night, you curl yourself into the smallest shape possible, arms wrapped tight, face hidden, praying for warmth that never comes. Bodies lie close together, stacked beneath sodden blankets, sharing breath, stealing what little heat they can. Sometimes you wake and do not know if the one beside you is alive. You count the dead each morning if you can bear it. Frost forms on eyebrows, on lips, on the edge of every ragged cloth. The youngest go first, their voices growing quiet, their faces slipping away until there is nothing left but bones in a blanket. The old die with less complaint, simply closing their eyes, hands folded over their hearts, as if waiting for someone to say a prayer that never comes. The strongest last the longest, but even they are bent by hunger, their bodies shrinking, eyes sunken and wild. Sometimes you are surprised to see yourself in the faces around the fire. There is no one left who looks like the person you were. Food is not even a word here, just a memory that grows crueler every day. You boil strips of leather, chewing for hours, tongue bleeding, jaw sore. Bark is torn from every tree, stripped and scraped until your gums blister and your stomach twists at the bitterness. The rats become the most precious thing in the world, each one caught and fought over, bones cracked open for the marrow. The last dog disappears, its chain left behind in the snow, and no one says a word about what happened. You find a bone gnawed clean behind one of the ruined shelters and look away. Once, you would have posted a photo of your meal, picked between choices, pushed away what you didn't finish. Here, a scrap of gristle is a feast. Hunger makes you someone else. You see the madness settle in the eyes of the people around you. Faces twitch, hands shake, speech grows slow and broken. Some sit in the corners of the shelters, rocking back and forth, whispering names, staring at nothing. Others wander into the night, leaving behind shoes and coats, vanishing in the white. No one follows. You hear stories later of bodies found upright in the snow, eyes frozen open, mouths full of ice. Some are never found at all. You do not know which fate you would prefer. One night, a child dies in her sleep, her breath slowing until it stops. Her mother stays up with her, crooning songs in a voice too thin to carry, hands stroking cold hair. When you rise in the morning, you find the mother crouched over the tiny body, her lips and hands red with blood. No one moves. The mother does not cry, does not speak. When she finally leaves the shelter, someone closes the door behind her. She does not return. In another world, grief was met with arms around shoulders, casseroles left at the door, counselors who said you would heal. Here, grief is an exile, another loss no one will name. The graveyard is full, and even the ground does not want your dead. The earth is too hard to dig deep. You see a man scraping at the snow in the night, hands bare, nails bleeding, trying to break through to the bodies below. He pulls at a frozen limb, teeth chattering, eyes wild. When he is caught, the camp erupts in panic and rage. Some say he must be killed for what he's done. Others shout for exile, for mercy. There is a fight, a rock swings, a nose breaks, someone is pushed out into the dark. You listen to the shouts, the sobs, the bitter silence that follows. No one knows how to be human anymore. You hear whispers, who is eating what, who you can trust, who will go next. The pot on the fire is watched more closely than any treasure. You do not ask what is in the broth, you drink and look away from the floating shreds. Sometimes, when you are honest with yourself, you know there is more in that pot than bark or rat or shoe leather. You force yourself to forget the taste, to swallow and thank whoever brought it, to pretend you do not recognize the shape of a bone or the edge of a fingernail. When someone is caught with flesh in their pockets, the camp turns on them, no trial, only fear. They are beaten, thrown into the cold, left to fend for themselves. Sometimes you hear their screams at night, carried away by the wind. Hunger twists your mind, gives you visions, memories you can barely distinguish from dreams. You see warm rooms, stoves glowing orange, bread rising in the oven, the sound of the microwave beeping, your mother calling you to dinner. You taste butter and sugar, hear the clink of glasses, the thump of music from another room. Then you wake, lips cracked, tongue stuck to the roof of your mouth, the taste of blood and ash thick in your throat. You shiver, teeth chattering so hard you bite your own tongue, and realize you are crying for something that never really existed here. Outside, the snow grows deeper. The camp shrinks into itself, all energy spent on survival, all joy ground down to nothing. Blizzards come, howling and endless, burying the world in white. You dig out what you can, dragging blankets and bodies into whatever shelter is left standing. Roofs collapse under the weight. You hear the creak, the groan, the final snap, then the rush of cold air and snow that suffocates even the last spark of warmth. You find yourself crawling through drifts, blind and desperate, searching for anyone still alive. Frostbite takes hands and feet. Skin blackens and peels. You try to warm the dying with your own body, pressing close, sharing breath, but it is never enough. Sometimes the only hope is a knife, a dull blade, a prayer, a scream muffled by a mitten. You watch as fingers are cut away, as toes are hacked off and left in the snow, as wounds fester and rot, the stench of death rising in the close air. There is no medicine, no bandage, only rags and hope. Sometimes you wonder which is worse, the pain or the shame. At the edge of the camp, you see figures in the trees, indigenous people watching, silent, unmoving. Some days they leave strange gifts. A basket of roots, a smoked fish, a handful of dried berries. You do not know if it is kindness, a warning, or a test. Some in the camp argue about what to do, eat, and risk poison or starve. Sometimes you see children from their band, faces painted and grave, staring at you as if they are seeing ghosts. You are afraid to wave, afraid to hope. As the weeks drag on, people disappear. Some die in their sleep, faces peaceful, as if they have finally found warmth somewhere else. Others wander out into the blizzard, driven mad by visions or the endless hunger. Their footprints vanish in the drifts. Those left behind lose the urge to count, to bury, to remember. Each day is a litany of loss, a name, a face, a hand that used to comfort you. You grow numb to it, each death just another mark on the wall, another empty blanket by the fire. Spring comes not as a blessing, but as a kind of surrender. The snow melts, revealing bones and rags, the half-buried remains of friends and strangers. You dig shallow graves where you can, piling stones to keep the wild animals at bay. You catch the scent of rot in the breeze, hear the crows calling, see dogs sniffing at the edges of the camp, hungry for what is left. More than half the camp is gone. The survivors move like shadows, eyes hollow, skin stretched thin over bone, unable to meet your gaze. At night, you remember what you used to fear: bad news, missed appointments, embarrassment, hunger that meant only a late dinner or a diet. Here, fear is a gnawing, endless thing, a shadow that clings to you even as the days grow longer and the sun returns. You lie awake, listening to the wind and the memories, the sound of someone sobbing quietly into the dark. You promise yourself you will never forget, but you already feel the edges of who you were slipping away. In the end, all that is left is endurance. There is no triumph, no joy, only the faint hope that tomorrow might be different. You eat what you can, trust who you must, and wait for the next disaster, knowing the world is changed and so are you. You wake to the sound of iron dragging through mud. The morning is heavy and gray, the air thick with the smell of wet earth, sweat, and something sour that never goes away. You sit up, blanket stiff with dried mud, and see the overseers marching the newest arrivals across the field, shackled together, shoulders slumped, eyes full of a terror you recognize but can never name. They are Africans, their skins split and scarred, backs striped from the whip. They move in silence, some so young they can barely keep pace, others old enough to remember a different sun. They are not greeted, not offered water, not even spoken to in words they can understand. They are sorted and counted, marked with chalk, and sent to the worst of the huts. You remember a time when new faces meant a welcome basket, an awkward handshake, a list of numbers for emergencies. Here, they are numbers, that is all. Not far away, you see the Indigenous prisoners captured in the last retaliation, their faces blank, their hands bound in rawhide. They are not allowed to speak. They are watched more closely than the animals. When the sun rises higher, they are set to work with the others, digging, hauling stones, clearing stumps with splintered tools and bruised hands. If anyone slows, the overseer's lash flicks out, sharp as lightning. Sometimes the sound is enough. Sometimes it is not. You look away, but the cries find you anyway. Indentured servants trudge alongside the enslaved, their heads bent, eyes hollow from hunger and loss. One tries to slip away, vanishing behind a shed. She does not make it far. You hear the shouting, the rush of feet, and then see her dragged out, her shift torn and muddy. She is lashed in the square, the marks left open for all to see. Her face is wet with tears and snot. No one tries to help. At home, running away meant boarding a bus or calling a friend. Here, it means the whip and weeks of shame. The work never stops. Overseers stalk up and down the rows, calling out names, barking orders, lifting their whips to keep the lines moving. Black and white, Indigenous and European, the chain runs through ankles and wrists, a single pulse of misery in the morning light. You watch as a man drops his bucket and is forced to the stocks. A woman staggers and is branded on the shoulder, her scream swallowed by the wind. The stink of burnt skin hangs over everything. Once you would have filled out an accident report, called HR, posted an angry review online. Here, you keep your head down and pray your hands don't fail. You catch a whisper, someone has been meeting at night, talking revolt. The rumor spreads like fire. You see the overseers grow tense, their eyes scanning the faces, their hands tightening on the whips. One night, they round up a group Africans, a few Indigenous prisoners, and 2 white servants. They are dragged into the open, beaten until blood runs, then hanged from a tree. Their bodies swing in the early light, a warning to everyone. At home, protests meant picket signs, chants, maybe a night in jail. Here, it is a grave before you can beg for mercy. A new ship arrives. Fresh faces, still sick from the crossing, step off the planks. They see the bodies, the marks on the living, and the look of shock on their faces is almost comical. One tries to intervene a boy. Not more than 17, he steps between an overseer and a young captive, voice shaking. The answer comes as a blow to the head, the boy left sprawled in the mud. You look away, afraid that even watching will mark you. Children are not spared. You see a girl no older than 6 ripped from her mother's arms, sold to a farmer up the road. The mother screams, her voice scraping against the sky, but the overseer's whip snaps across her back and she collapses in the dirt. The child is sent to carry water and empty chamber pots, hands too small for the buckets. At home, children fought over screen time and snacks, ran to their parents at bedtime. Here, they disappear into the fields, their names lost. By midday, the heat is choking. The sun presses down on you until sweat stings your eyes and the world swims. People faint in the fields. You see an old man collapse, chest heaving, mouth open for air that will not come. He dies where he falls. A woman tries to drag him aside, but is kicked for her trouble. His body is left for the end of the day, dumped by the fence with the others. You think of AC, of ice water, of sick days and cold showers. Here, the only relief is death. Labor breaks even the strongest. Backs give out, hands swell and split, feet rot inside worn shoes. You see bodies dragged from the rows and left in a ditch. The living are given a cup of water and told to keep working. Someone jokes that the weak feed the earth. No one laughs. Not all the settlers are blind to it. One woman, her accent thick, her hands soft, calls out the leader, asking if this is what survival means. She is slapped hard enough to bleed and thrown out of camp. Her friends do not argue. Another man is caught praying over the captives, leaves food hidden for the children. He is sent away at dusk, threatened with death if he returns. At home, outrage might have gone viral, a fundraiser, an article, a podcast. Here, you are erased before your story is told. In the shadows at the edge of the fields, you see quiet gatherings, Africans, Indigenous prisoners, and even a few desperate servants. They speak in whispers, share scraps of bread, draw maps in the dust. Some teach each other words, passing secret messages in songs. They plan at night, trading dreams of escape for scraps of hope. You hear them sometimes, low, urgent voices carried on the wind, the fear and longing clear even when you cannot understand the language. You wonder if you would have the courage to run, to risk the dogs, the woods, the cold. You wonder if you would be remembered. One night, a small group vanishes. The overseers wake to empty beds, fresh footprints in the mud, and shouts echo through the camp. Dogs are sent out, torches swinging, voices cursing in the dark. They catch two by sunrise, an Indigenous boy and a servant girl. Both are lashed and branded, their wounds left open for the flies. The others are never found. The leader tells the group this is mercy. You watch the sky turn pink and think of alarms and police calls, amber alerts, and all the things that used to keep people safe. Here, you only pray for a night without screaming. Every day, the world grows harsher. You see overseers punishing black and white laborers the same way by the lash, the stocks, the iron brand. There is no mercy, no exception for color or creed. The law is pain, and anyone who questions it is silenced. The lines between captors and captives, between settlers and slaves, are always shifting. always written in blood. At dusk, the fields are empty except for those too weak to move. Bodies are counted, some missing, some dead, some hiding in the tall grass. The overseers prowl with lanterns, searching for anyone left behind. You help carry a woman to her hut, her breathing shallow, her face turned to the wall. You think of hospitals, of nurses and paramedics, of the simple act of calling for help. Here, you wrap her in a blanket and sit beside her, holding her hand until the shaking stops. At night, the cabins are locked from the outside, iron rattling through the darkness. Children cry for parents they may never see again. Mothers rock themselves to sleep. Fathers press their fists against their mouths to hold in the sound. You remember a time when bedtime meant a story and a nightlight, a kiss and a promise that the monsters were only in your head. Here, the monsters wear boots and carry keys. You lie awake, listening to the sounds of suffering that fill the camp, the coughs, the sobs, the low mutter of prayers in a dozen tongues. The world outside is alive with the threat of wolves, the hiss of wind through broken shutters. You watch the stars and imagine how far you are from comfort, from safety, from home. Sometimes, when the overseers have gone, you see small acts of rebellion, water spilled on purpose, tools broken, a quiet song in a forbidden language, a look passed between captives, a hand held in secret. Resistance is measured in moments, in breaths, in the hope that someone will remember you were more than a number. As dawn comes, you hear shouts again. Another servant is missing, another Indigenous woman gone. The overseers are furious. Punishments are harsher that day, but the secret alliances grow stronger. You sense that something is changing, that the old order is cracking at the edges, even as the brutality grows. The day ends with the smell of blood and smoke drifting across the fields. The sun sets behind the trees, and you are left with your memories. A world where labor meant paychecks and sick days, where outrage meant hashtags and marches, where childhood was protected. Here, labor is a sentence, kindness is a crime, and everyone is watching, waiting, suffering, or plotting their escape. You pull your knees to your chest, blanket over your head, and try not to listen as the locks snap shut for another night. The moon rises on a camp full of captives, some in chains, some holding the keys, and you wonder what kind of world you will wake to tomorrow. You wake to a silence that is wrong. Even the birds seem to know what is coming. The sun does not rise so much as bleed into the sky, a thin red light leaking through the clouds. The air is thick with smoke from a dozen cooking fires, the scent mixed with sweat and gunpowder and fear. The meeting begins at dawn. The leaders stand in a tight circle, faces grim, voices clipped and cold. The plan is simple, too simple. There will be no more waiting, no more fear of raids or stolen food, no more watching the tree line and wondering when the next arrow will fly. Someone shouts that the only way to survive is to strike first. The others nod, hollow-eyed and hungry, clutching their muskets, axes, anything that can kill. There was a time when justice meant a courtroom, when revenge was a word in history books. Here, it is a blood promise made in the dawn light. You march with the others through the woods, your hands slick with sweat, heart thudding so hard it drowns out the voices behind you. The world is muffled by fog and dread. You remember your own childhood, the safety of mornings that began with cartoons and cereal, not war. Now you walk in a line of desperate settlers, feet sinking into moss and old leaves, muskets heavy in your arms. You reach the village as the sun crests the trees. There is barely time for the people there to scream. The attack is a blur of noise and fire. Gunshots echo between the houses. Axes crash down on doors. Shrieks ring out that you will never forget. You see women running with children clutched to their chests, elders stumbling in the dust, people reaching for weapons or just for each other. Your own hands shake as you load your musket, as you aim at a figure who does not seem real until you see the blood spray against the wall. The horror is unstoppable. Flames leap from house to house, smoke billows into the sky. Someone throws a torch onto a roof, and the thatch goes up all at once, bright and hungry. Children run into the woods, chased by dogs and men with knives. You hear a voice crying for mercy, cut short by gunfire. You see someone you know, someone you shared bread with, swinging an axe at a woman who is on her knees, arms raised to the sky. The world narrows to smoke, screams, and the smell of burning flesh. The massacre is over in moments, but the violence ripples outward, deeper than wounds. You see bodies sprawled in the dust, faces blackened with soot, hands still clutching bits of cloth or beads or nothing at all. You watch a child crawl away from a burning house, hair singed, voice hoarse from crying. The only answer is silence. When you return to your own settlement, the air is different. You feel it in your skin, a heaviness, a pressure, as if the land itself knows what you have done. Some settlers drop their weapons and fall to their knees, vomiting in the grass. Others cannot stop laughing or shaking. You see a woman stare at her own hands as if she cannot believe what they have become. The sun is still climbing when the warning comes, a horn blown in the woods, a chorus of shouts and drums echoing through the trees. Retaliation. The ground shakes as dozens, then hundreds of warriors pour from the forest, faces painted, arrows nocked, axes raised high. The air is a storm of sound, war cries, musket fire, the deep crash of hatchets against wood. You run for cover as arrows rain down. Houses splinter and catch fire. Flames leap from roof to roof, licking at the sky, turning smoke red and orange. A bullet whizzes past your ear. You duck into a shed, pressing yourself against the wall as people scream outside, the world reduced to chaos. You hear a child sobbing, another shouting for a mother who will never answer. Some settlers try to fight back, firing blindly from windows, hurling knives and stones. Most are cut down where they stand, trampled or burned, or simply lost in the confusion. Others run for the woods, vanishing into the trees with nothing but the clothes on their backs. You see a woman clutch her baby and leap from a burning window, her dress alight, her hair blazing in the night. The attack does not stop with fire. Warriors move through the camp, capturing children, dragging men from hiding places, cutting down anyone who resists. Stories later swirl of torture, of slow deaths in the clearing, of bodies left hanging as a message. You hear the screams, short, sharp, then nothing. When the battle quiets, you emerge into a world unmade. Cabins are black shells, smoke still curling from charred beams. The fields are scorched to mud. Bodies lie where they fell, twisted and torn. Some are so burned you cannot tell if they were friend or foe. You count the faces you know and lose track at 20. You see wild dogs loping through the ruins, already tearing at the dead. Night falls, but the terror does not fade. Survivors huddle in the woods or behind what is left of the fort, bleeding, shaking, eyes wide and staring. Some have wounds that will never heal, arms burned, legs shattered, faces split open. Others are silent, staring into nothing. You recognize madness in their eyes, a fracture that will not close. Panic spreads like fire through what is left of the group. There are whispers of spies, of traitors who guided the attackers. Someone is accused in the dark, a man who once traded with the people in the woods. He is dragged out and hanged from a tree, his body twisting in the firelight, the crowd too afraid to speak. Another is beaten to death for refusing to join the defense. There are no rules, only terror. Bodies are left where they fall. The ground is too hard, the living too few. In the night, wild animals come, wolves, dogs, things you cannot name, ripping flesh from the unburied dead. You hear the snarling and crunch of bones. You pull your blanket over your head and try to shut out the sounds, but they find you anyway. You remember a world where tragedy meant counselors, a crisis line, a candlelight vigil. Here, there are only ashes, silence, and the smell of blood that never leaves your skin. In the morning, smoke still rises from what is left of the settlement. Word spreads to other camps and farms, some run, others dig in, all afraid. You hear rumors of whole families lost, of forts abandoned overnight. No one trusts their neighbor. Every stranger is a spy, every noise in the woods a sign of death. You walk through the ruins with mud up to your ankles and blood on your boots. You see a mother searching for her child, calling a name into the cold wind. You see a man kneeling over a burned body, head in his hands, rocking back and forth as if prayer could bring back the dead. There is no comfort. The land itself seems soaked with what has been lost. By nightfall, you are smaller in number, smaller in hope. The sky turns red again, reflecting the fires that never really go out. No one speaks. There are no more meetings, no more plans, only the quiet, endless work of counting the dead and waiting for what will come next. The morning after the massacre, hope is something you taste only when you wake, before memory settles in. The camp is quieter, smaller, and every face is closed and wary. There are fewer fires, less laughter, only the scrape of spoons on empty pots, the whisper of hunger behind every word. For a long time, the greatest fear was what lay beyond the trees. Now, the greatest threat may be sleeping beside you. It begins slowly, almost quietly, a split you can feel in the air. The poor gather their blankets and huddle close, speaking in low voices, eyes on the ground. The wealthy stand apart, arms folded, guarding what little they have left. Newcomers, desperate and lost, look for someone to follow. The old hands, hardened by every loss, trust no one. There are whispered insults, bitter stares, 1,000 small wounds that fester in silence. One morning, the fighting breaks out in the open. It starts with an argument over a sack of meal, who found it, who deserves it, who gets to decide. Voices rise, old grievances surface, and suddenly the knives are out. A man shoves another. The two tumble to the ground, fists flying, teeth bared. The others circle, watching, some shouting, some egging them on. You remember when fights were broken up by teachers, by police, by rules. Here, there is no one to intervene. The struggle is short and brutal. A rock connects with a skull, and a man lies still in the mud, blood pooling beneath his ear. For a moment, no one moves. Then someone grabs the sack of meal, and the group fractures again, smaller than before. Leadership unravels. The man who claimed authority is dragged from his shelter one night, his hands bound, his face swollen from blows. He pleads for mercy, but his words are lost in the anger of the mob. Someone shouts that he hoarded food, that he sold out the camp to the enemy. Others demand justice, revenge, anything to break the tension that grips the group. He is beaten until he cannot rise, and his captors turn their attention to the rest of the stores. Knives flash in the firelight. The food and weapons are divided, hidden away in new hiding places, stolen back and forth, as the night drags on. The rebellion becomes open. Some want to run, take what they can, and flee into the woods, hoping to find another camp, another life. Others demand that everyone stay, dig in, fight off both hunger and the threat from outside. Plans are whispered in the dark. You hear talk of a raid on the leader's hut, a secret signal, a midnight flight. You sleep with your boots on, never trusting the silence. When you close your eyes, you dream of alarms, of police cars, of a world where rebellion meant angry letters, not sharpened sticks. The next day, a group arms themselves with stolen muskets and axes, packing what food they can find. They slip out before sunrise, moving like shadows along the edge of the woods. You watch them go, heart pounding, unsure if you envy their courage or pity their desperation. Their absence is felt instantly, the camp smaller, the mood sharper, every face drawn tight with suspicion. The peace does not last. The armed group is spotted by an indigenous band, their war paint bright as blood. There is no negotiation. The woods explode with shouts and gunfire. The ambush is swift and merciless. You hear the screams and see men run from the trees, their shirts dark with blood, arrows bristling from their backs. The few who make it back to camp collapse in the dirt, sobbing or silent, unable to speak of what happened. You count the faces and realize you know fewer every day. Even in retreat, disaster finds you. Someone knocks over a lantern, or maybe it is deliberate. A spark leaps to a pile of dried reeds, and suddenly the camp is on fire. The wind catches the flames and sends them leaping from shelter to shelter, devouring what little you have left. You grab at buckets, at blankets, at anything to beat down the fire, but it is hopeless. Food stores burn. Blankets and tools go up in smoke. You try to save something, anything, but the heat is too much. You stumble back, coughing, eyes streaming, and watch as the last of your safety goes up in orange and black. In the confusion, those with nothing left to lose turn against those with the most. Servants, slaves, and the desperate join the rebellion, rising up against their masters, demanding their share. For a moment, there is a wild hope that things might change, but hope dies quickly. One of the servants is caught, dragged into the center of camp, beaten until he cannot stand. Others are betrayed, their plans revealed by a whisper, a bribe, a threat. Punishment is swift, lash, stocks, cold silence. As the chaos peaks, a shout rises from the woods. The governor has returned, his face pale, his eyes cold, soldiers at his back. He surveys the ruins, the burned shelters, the battered faces. There is no trial, no chance to plead your case. The governor calls for order, calls for blood. Summary executions begin at once. Men and women are dragged from the crowd, accused of theft, rebellion, betrayal. Some are shot, some hanged from the nearest tree. You stand in the mud, breath caught in your throat, and try not to look away. At home, you would have watched this on the news, shocked and safe, a world away. Here, there is nowhere to hide from the violence. As the bodies are counted, the woods come alive again. The Indigenous band has not left. The camp, weakened by fire and fighting, is easy prey. They strike at dawn, swift and silent, cutting down the guards, setting what little remains ablaze. Survivors flee into the woods, dragging wounded behind them, crying out for help that never comes. In the smoke and confusion, children vanish, elders collapse, friends turn on each other for a mouthful of bread. The day ends with a grave. It is not a graveyard, only a hole in the ground, hacked out of the mud with sticks and hands. The dead are piled together, rebels, leaders, servants, strangers, no markers, no prayers. You shovel dirt over faces you once knew, over enemies and friends alike. The smell of blood and ash hangs over everything. Wild dogs circle at the edge of the firelight, teeth bared, waiting for darkness. When night falls, you are fewer than ever. Allies are now enemies, old loyalties shattered by hunger and fear. No one sleeps close to anyone else. Whispers drift through the camp, accusations, regrets, desperate bargains. The trees seem to press closer, the darkness heavier, every sound a threat. You remember a world where mutiny meant angry emails, a bad quarter, a resignation letter. Here, it means a field of bodies and no one left to mourn. At last, the camp is silent. You sit alone by the dying fire, stomach twisting with hunger, mind numb with exhaustion and grief. There is no hope for rescue, no help from the outside. The rebellion is finished. Those who remain are broken, hungry, and haunted by everything they have done. You grip your knees, feeling the blood and ash under your nails, and wait for morning, knowing that even if the sun rises, it will bring no relief. The world is smaller than ever now. The survivors are scattered across the camp, no longer a community, but a patchwork of shivering, hungry souls who sleep with their backs against whatever wall is left. You wake with a start in the gray half-light, heart pounding, certain you heard something outside, a whisper, a footstep, a warning. Your hands tremble as you push aside the blanket, too thin to keep out the cold, and rise into another day of suspicion and fear. It begins with a child's cough. At first, it's just another sound in the endless chorus of suffering. But then the cough deepens, a fever follows, and soon the youngest girl in camp is shaking, her breath ragged, cheeks flushed, eyes darting to the corners of the shelter as if she sees things no one else can. Her mother tries to hush her, strokes her hair, prays over her. But the girl cries out in the night, clawing at her own skin, and you hear the whispers start to grow witchcraft, a curse, punishment for sins you did not commit. By morning, the fear is everywhere, thick as smoke. When 2 more children fall ill, and an old man dies before the sun has even cleared the trees, the rumors harden into certainty. It's her, someone mutters, nodding at a woman whose husband died weeks ago. She brought this here. She made a pact. Eyes dart from face to face, searching for guilt, for weakness, for the mark of the devil. The air in camp changes. Where once people huddled together for warmth, now they draw away, clutching their children close, whispering prayers under their breath. Each death sharpens the suspicion. Each fit of coughing is met with sidelong glances, and every strange word becomes evidence. The line between grief and blame blurs until they are one and the same. It does not take long for the accusations to become law. A court is formed by the strongest men, desperate to regain control over a world slipping into chaos. They drag the sick girl's mother into the center of camp, tie her hands behind her back, and demand that she confess. She protests, pleads, but no one listens. Name your accomplices, they say. Tell us how you cursed us. The woman sobs, but the blows rain down first with open hands, then with fists, then with the butt of a musket. Her confession comes not from guilt, but from pain. Her story is wild, broken by gasps. She saw shadows in the woods, dreamed of black dogs, spoke to someone in the night. She names a neighbor, a friend, her own daughter. The crowd seizes on the names, pulling those accused from their shelters, ignoring their pleas. You remember a time when accusations meant lawyers and courts, cross-examinations and appeals. Here, a trembling finger and a shaking voice are enough to decide your fate. The trial is a spectacle. The girl's mother is forced to her knees in the mud, and the others are lined up beside her. Someone brings a torch. Another sharpens a stick. The leaders argue over whether to burn or hang or crush. At last, they settle for the rope. You watch as a noose is thrown over a tree branch. The woman's feet scrabble in the dirt as she is lifted, her face swollen, eyes wide. The crowd stands silent, some crying, some praying, some just staring, until her body stops moving. In the days that follow, violence spreads like sickness. Friends turn on each other, accusations traded for scraps of bread, for a place by the fire, for nothing at all. A boy is beaten for whispering to himself. A woman is chased from the shelter for tending a sick child. You hear a scream in the night and do not go to see who it is. You do not ask questions. You keep your head down, avoid every eye, and try not to think of the world you left behind. Fear reaches beyond the camp. Someone claims to have seen the Indigenous shaman at the edge of the woods, his face painted, eyes gleaming in the firelight. He is blamed for the fever, the deaths, every misery you have suffered. One night, a group of men take up axes and torches, marching out into the darkness. They find an old man and his family, huddled by their fire, and beat them without mercy. In the morning, there is blood on the snow, and a silence deeper than any you have ever known. No one speaks of what happened, but the fear is stronger than ever. Desperation breeds madness. In the following days, a group tries an exorcism, dragging another accused woman into the open. They press her face into the dirt, force a cross into her hands, and shout prayers until their throats are raw. The woman convulses, screams, bites at the hands holding her down. Someone knocks over a lantern, flames leaping up her dress. In the chaos, no one can save her. The fire burns out, leaving only smoke and the smell of charred flesh. The survivors step back, eyes wide, blaming demons and curses. Superstition finds proof in every shadow. One afternoon, a wild animal, a wolf, maybe, or a starving dog bursts into camp, lips curled, ribs sharp as knife blades. It lunges at a girl hauling water, dragging her down before it is beaten away. The animal is left dead in the snow, but the wound is deeper. A sign, someone whispers, a demon sent to punish us. The fear is as real as the hunger. Panic takes hold, as if the entire camp has caught fire. Some pack what little they have and slip into the woods, choosing the unknown over the terror that fills every shelter. You watch as a family disappears into the trees, faces blank, eyes haunted. No one tries to stop them. Others barricade themselves, keeping knives close, jumping at every sound. Each group is convinced that death is coming from the other. You spend the night listening to footsteps outside, unsure if they belong to friends or enemies, if you are safer alone or in a crowd. By the end of the week, the camp is a graveyard of trust. Those who remain speak in whispers, eyes darting, fingers stained with dirt and blood. The old friendships are gone, replaced by suspicion and the memory of violence. You watch a child draw strange symbols in the mud, and someone drags him away, shouting about evil spirits. A man refuses to eat food prepared by another, convinced it has been cursed. Sleep brings no rest, only nightmares of fire and screaming, of faces you once loved twisted by fear. In the new world that fear has built, you live by silence and suspicion. You keep your secrets, hide your grief, and watch every shadow for signs of betrayal. You remember when illness meant a doctor's visit, a waiting room, pills that promised healing. Here, sickness is a sentence, a curse, a reason to die. You wonder if you will ever trust again, if there will ever be a day without dread. Night falls heavy, pressing against the windows, full of sounds you cannot name. Somewhere, someone weeps for the world that is gone. You close your eyes and wonder if you will survive until morning, or if the next accusation will be yours. The cold presses into every part of you now, the kind that settles into your bones and dreams and memory. You move through the days in a fog, every step an act of will, every breath a small battle. There are so few left, just a handful of shadows in the ruins of the camp, faces so hollow you barely recognize them, not even in the shivering light of morning. You lie awake most nights, wrapped in every scrap of cloth you can find, listening to the wind pull at the walls, listening to the silence that follows, longer and deeper than ever before. You stop counting the days, and then you stop counting the living. The dead lie where they fell, wrapped in whatever rags could be spared, covered in snow that never quite hides their faces. Sometimes you see a hand, stiff and gray, reaching from beneath the drifts. Sometimes the animals find them first, thin dogs, wild things with red eyes, dragging bodies from the shelter, tearing at frozen flesh in the shadows. At home, you would have called animal control, dialed a number, waited for help. Here, there is no help. You shut your eyes, and the sound of teeth on bone follows you into your sleep. Madness moves among you like another hunger, whispering in every empty corner. People talk to the dead, to themselves, to things no one else can see. You wake to laughter, high and bright and echoing in the darkness, and it takes you a moment to realize it's your own voice. Some sit for hours, rocking in the cold, whispering to ghosts, seeing old friends in the shadows. One morning, you find a woman with a rope in her hands, lips blue, eyes open and unblinking, swinging gently from a broken beam. You cut her down with a knife that shakes in your hand and bury her beneath the snow with the rest. There is no more firewood, no more warmth. Shelters creak and groan in the night, the beams swollen and split from months of cold and rot. You hear the snap of wood, the sudden hush as a roof gives way, the rush of snow pouring in. Someone screams in the dark, trapped beneath the weight. You dig with numb hands, pulling bodies from the wreckage, dragging blankets and battered crates into a circle. You try to light a fire, but there is nothing dry. The spark catches on a rag, the wind picks it up, and suddenly the last of your shelter is burning. Smoke fills your lungs, stings your eyes. Someone shouts, but you cannot see through the haze. You grab what you can and stumble out into the snow, watching the last of your food and blankets go up in flames. You remember a time when a house fire meant sirens and neighbors, and a place to sleep afterward. Here, you just stand in the cold, ash on your face, hunger gnawing at your belly. The world shrinks to a patch of snow, a handful of bodies, a pile of rags that used to be a home. Hunger makes you cruel, makes you desperate. You see it in every movement, every glance. Two men fight over a bone, teeth bared, fists red with blood. A woman claws at another's hands for a scrap of leather. You hear grunts, sobs, curses. When it's over, one more is dead, eyes glazed, hands still curled into fists. You drag the body away, but the hunger does not lift. You sit with your back to the wall, clutching your knees, trying to remember what it felt like to be safe. It is not only hunger that stalks the camp. Fear is everywhere. You see shadows moving at the edge of the woods, tall figures, wrapped in furs, faces painted and unreadable. Some approach with slow steps, hands raised, voices calm and quiet. They offer roots and dried fish, words you do not understand. Others stand farther back, arrows nocked, eyes sharp. You do not know if they have come to help or to finish what the winter began. A few among you fall to their knees, hands outstretched, begging for mercy. Some are led away, stumbling through the snow, given blankets and bowls of hot broth. You watch from a distance, wondering if you should follow, if it is surrender or rescue. Others try to run, dashing into the woods, but the watchers catch them easily, dragging them back, tying their hands. You see the fear on their faces as they vanish into the trees, slaves or prisoners or something worse. Days blur together. You move less and less, too weak to do more than huddle with the living, listen to the wind, watch the snow swirl in the broken doorway. Hallucinations come and go, bright rooms, the smell of food, the sound of laughter, music drifting from a distant window. Sometimes you see your family sitting at a table, passing bread and fruit, faces shining in the candlelight. You reach out and your hand closes on cold air. The blizzard breaks and the world is silent. There are almost none left. You find yourself writing on a scrap of bark, your own blood smeared on your finger, the words barely legible. Please help. Dying. Alone. Forgive us. You leave it in the ruins of the camp, hoping someone will find it, hoping someone will care. You do not know if you are asking forgiveness from God or from the living. Snow begins to melt, the world shifting from white to gray, from ice to mud. You walk through the ruins, cabins half collapsed, doors swinging on broken hinges, graves dug shallow and quickly, bones poking from the thawing ground. The dogs are gone, the rats gone, only crows and thin foxes moving among the bodies. You step over ribs, recognize a scrap of a dress, a shoe half buried in mud. The living are so few you do not count them. You nod at each other across the ruins, nothing left to say. The indigenous families who took in the last survivors are quiet, watchful. Some share their food, their fire, their stories. You listen, not understanding the words, comforted only by the crackle of wood, the soft shuffle of feet on earth. You do not know if you are free or captive, guest or slave. All you know is that you are still breathing and the world is changed. As spring comes, the camp is a graveyard. Bones bleach in the sun, wood sags, ashes drift in the wind. No crops grow. No children laugh. The land feels haunted, every breeze carrying the sound of voices lost to the snow. You walk through the ruins, touching walls, stooping to pick up a fragment of pottery, a page of a journal, a bead from a broken necklace. You remember the ones who did not make it, their faces, their laughter, their last words. You no longer dream of rebuilding. The hope that once kept you alive is gone, replaced by a hollow tiredness, an acceptance that survival is not the same as living. The future is something you cannot imagine, not here, not now. You lie down in the mud, the sun on your face, and let the memory of all you have lost wash over you, as gentle and terrible as the last melting snow. In the end, only memory remains, the names of the dead, the sound of laughter in a vanished home, the ache in your chest as you realize you are the last to remember. The world has moved on, and you are left with silence, the long shadow of winter, and the knowledge that nothing here will ever be the same. The land is thick with silence, a silence that stretches for miles, broken only by the wind scraping through the grass and the occasional call of a crow circling overhead. Years have passed, but the scars remain, hidden under moss and wildflowers, beneath layers of leaves and new soil. The old camp is almost gone now, but not erased. The outline of cabins, half collapsed and covered in vines, still marks the place where hope ended in hunger and fire. Shards of pottery, buttons, rusted nails glint in the mud after a storm. Sometimes, after a heavy rain, bones work their way to the surface, pale, smooth, and silent. Later settlers arrive, stumbling out of the woods or stepping off battered boats, their arms full of tools and blankets, eyes scanning for a place to call home. To them, the land seems quiet, fertile, promising. They see open meadows and strong trees for building, fresh streams for drinking. The old fences are grown over, but a careful look reveals piles of stones that do not belong, mounds in the earth with no crops growing atop them, strange dips and rises in the ground. Children wander, digging at the edge of the clearing, and return with handfuls of beads, buckles, even teeth. Their mothers shoo them away and bury the discoveries, but the unease lingers long after the children forget. At dusk, when the air is still and the shadows are long, Indigenous families sometimes walk the border of the abandoned camp. They do not linger. Elders point out places to the youngest. Here, the ground is bad. Here the dead are angry. Here the wind carries voices. Stories are passed from one generation to the next. Tales of desperate men and women, of starvation, of betrayal and broken promises. Some warn not to drink from the stream, not to sleep on the bare earth, not to gather firewood after sunset. There are names for this place in their language, names that mean sorrow, or warning, or simply do not come here. As the years pass, a new colony rises over the ruins. New settlers break ground where the first cabins once stood, shovels striking wood, metal, even skulls. Sometimes a group of men pause at a grave they cannot explain, the mound of earth soft and damp beneath their boots. They fill it in, muttering a prayer, then keep building. Houses go up, gardens are planted, fires crackle in the night. But the past does not sleep. Sometimes, in the hush before dawn, a settler wakes and swears he has heard voices, crying, laughter, the hollow ring of a bell. Shadows dart at the edge of firelight, and once a child runs home in tears, claiming to have seen a woman in rags standing by the oldest tree. It does not take long for stories to grow. The survivors of the first colony have vanished, but their legend spreads like roots under the ground. At every gathering, someone has a tale. Of mothers who ate their children, of men who dug up graves for meat, of nights when the sky glowed red and the snow stank of smoke and death. As new faces arrive, the legends are passed along, warnings and whispers, tales meant to scare children, or maybe to remind everyone that safety here is never certain. You hear the word massacre, the word witch, the word traitor. You hear that some turned on their own, that no one was blameless, that even the strongest broke in the end. Sometimes an old letter or journal is found, pressed between stones or buried in a box under a floor. The paper is stiff and stained, the writing jagged and desperate. By candlelight, a settler reads words written by hands long dead. Hunger, cold, the taste of leather boiled to nothing, the sound of footsteps in the night. There are prayers and curses, pleas for rescue, scribbles that break off in mid-sentence. Sometimes a letter ends in a single word, help. Sometimes there is a smear of blood where a hand lost its strength. These fragments become sacred, shared around the fire, memorized by heart. But even these stories leave out what really happened. The worst things are not written down. The land itself seems changed, restless. Crops struggle. Fences rot. Every spring, new storms tear at the fields. Some years, nothing grows at all. Animals are born sickly. Lambs refuse to nurse. Dogs howl at empty corners. Farmers complain of bad luck, of blight, of something in the air. They curse the soil and pray for better years, but the feeling never lifts. You sense that something beneath the surface will not let go. You remember the warnings, the bones, the old stories that say blood seeps deeper than rain. Not everyone who survived the first winter died here. Some fled, disappearing into the woods, never seen again. A few found shelter with Indigenous families, living quietly on the edge of the New World, learning new names, new ways of moving through the land. Some tried to tell their stories, but most gave up, choosing silence over memory. Their children grew up knowing only pieces of the past, fragments of names, odd customs, a certain fear of winter. Others simply faded, no one left to remember them, their graves as lost as the names of those they loved. The violence did not end with the starving time. As the colonies grew, so did the cruelty. Slavery took root in the fields, overseers with whips replacing hunger with fear. Servants worked until they collapsed, and children grew up among gravestones, learning to play around the bones of strangers. Old rivalries turned to new wars, raids, fires, betrayals, blood paid for blood. Every fresh grave felt like a continuation, a refusal of peace. The land was never quiet for long. Children grew used to the ghosts. They chased each other through the grass, shouting and laughing, using old planks for swords and broken stones for forts. They made up games about the massacre, daring each other to walk the length of the burial mounds at night. Some claimed to hear whispers if they listened at the right time. Others slept with a hand pressed to the floor, just in case something cold reached up from below. The parents watched, uneasy, knowing the stories were more than games, but unable to stop them from growing. Over time, the colony changed shape. New roads were built, new walls raised. The land was plowed and grazed and cut for timber. But the memory never faded. Each season brought fresh reminders: the flood that unearthed bones, the drought that cracked the soil, the blight that turned every stalk black. Old journals were read and reread, new legends added, more warnings carved into trees and stones. Every family knew someone lost, someone who left and never returned, someone who woke in the night and could not be comforted. In the quietest hours, you walk the ruins and feel the weight of what was left behind. You stoop to pick up a button, a bead, a bit of iron. You brush the dirt from the carving on a fallen beam. You stand at the edge of a shallow grave, watching as rainwater pools in the low spot. You wonder what the land remembers, whose voices echo through the grass, whose dreams haunt the empty sky. No one talks of rebuilding now. There is only endurance, a stubborn holding on, a hope that the future will forget what the past cannot. But the wind carries old voices, the ground gives up its dead, and the world spins on with blood in its roots. You tell yourself the worst is over, that what remains can be buried or burned away. But in the silence, you know the land remembers everything: the hunger, the fear, the cruelty, the names whispered in the dark. One evening, as the sun sets red behind the trees, a child finds a skull at the edge of the garden and brings it to her mother. The mother takes it gently, washes the dirt away, and buries it deep. She says nothing, but all night she dreams of fire and snow and voices calling from the woods. In the morning, the girl is gone, running through the fields, chasing laughter you cannot hear. You stand in the doorway, watching the shadows, knowing the story is not finished, that it never will be. You leave the clearing, walking slow, boots sinking into mud that was once mixed with blood. You hear the wind in the grass, see the crows circling overhead, feel the cold earth beneath your feet. The land is quiet, but not empty. The memory endures.